Today we're diving into a world of heartbreaking stories as innocent convicts reclaim their lives in freedom after years of wrongful imprisonment. Starting with John Bunn, who spent 27 years wrongfully convicted of murder.
I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man.
In the heart of Brooklyn, New York, a 14-year-old named Bunn had his life forever altered when he was arrested by NYPD detective Louis Scarcella. What followed was 16 years behind bars, followed by 11 more years on parole as he tirelessly fought to clear his name. Bunn's conviction was overturned due to Detective Scarcella's misconduct and the fact that there wasn't even probable cause for his initial arrest.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
And finally, after 27 years of fighting to prove his innocence, he is finally exonerated.
I want to say thank you, Your Honor, because in 27 years, I've been fighting for my life.
Later, Bunn took legal action by filing a lawsuit against both the City of New York and Detective Scarcella. Now meet Clement Aguire, a man who faced a death sentence for a double murder he did not commit in Altamonte Springs, Florida.
I do know that nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me.
14 years ago, Aguire lived just a few doors down from a house where a mother and daughter were killed. Aguire soon found himself the prime suspect. Reportedly, he had visited the woman's house that fateful night asking for a beer, only to discover the lifeless bodies. In a desperate attempt to help, he tried to revive the woman, but overwhelmed by panic, he eventually ran home. Aguire did not call the police, fearing deportation as an undocumented immigrant from Honduras.
I didn't do it. I don't kill nobody.
9 years after Aguire was escorted out of the courtroom, new evidence came to light regarding the potentially misrepresented DNA. Aguire's lawyers filed for additional testing, which revealed that all of his DNA samples matched his testimony, showing his DNA was at the scene as he tried to save the victims. After 14 years, all charges against Aguire were dropped.
And I thank you for it. From the bottom of my heart.
Aguire reportedly is owed $720,000 from the state for the wrongful conviction. But state lawyers are fighting against the decision, and so far, he hasn't received anything. Daniel Viagas spent 18 years behind bars for a double homicide he didn't commit in El Paso, Texas. He was arrested at the age of 16, and a detective threatened him with beatings and the death penalty if he didn't sign a confession prepared by the detectives. Though he attempted to retract his confession a few hours later, it was too late. He was charged with 2 counts of capital murder, with a false confession as the only piece of evidence. The jury couldn't reach a verdict in the first trial. Viagas had a retrial, leading to a guilty verdict and a life sentence after spending 18 years in prison. However, this verdict was eventually overturned, and he was released on bond. He went on to start a family and get married. Currently, he's facing his 3rd trial.
If the defendant will please stand.
This emotional moment shows his reaction as he finds out whether he'll go home with his family or be sent back to prison to serve his life sentence.
The State of Texas versus Daniel Viagas, verdict form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Viagas not guilty of... You are no longer under any conditions. You are free to leave. Thank you.
Viagas is now a free man and has reportedly filed a lawsuit against the city of El Paso.
My innocence did not matter in their pursuit of a conviction.
Deborah Milky was sentenced to death and spent nearly 22 years on death row for a horrifying crime she didn't commit. Deborah's 4-year-old son was tragically found dead in a desert, having suffered 3 gunshot wounds. Detective Armando Salde Jr. questioned Milky, but this crucial interrogation was neither recorded nor reported. Salde claimed that Milky confessed to arranging the murder.
She then decided that it'd be best for Christopher Milky to die.
Deborah was charged with first-degree murder, even though there was no concrete record of her admitting to the crime. The state asserted that she masterminded the shooting, resulting in her receiving a death sentence. Questions began to emerge 20 years later about Milky's alleged confession to Detective Solde, a confession that she denies to this day.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son, Christopher, and I did not give a confession to Mr. Soldate.
The court discovered that Detective Solde had a history of perjury and infringing on individual rights during interrogations. Milky's supposed confession was the only evidence tying her to the crime. After 24 long years, during which she faced a death sentence, her conviction was finally overturned.
Losing a child to murder is a devastating tragedy. Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy. Try to imagine that. What happened to me could happen to any one of you.
Unfortunately for Milky, she didn't receive any compensation.
You are under arrest now for murder.
Please believe me, I wouldn't do that.
This is Susan Melon, sentenced to life in prison without parole due to false testimony. At 42 years old, she was arrested while taking her daughter to McDonald's. Little did she know that it would be the last time she'd see her child for 7 years, as she was charged with murder of an ex-boyfriend.
You are under arrest now for murder.
Please believe me, I wouldn't do that.
Susan Melon's conviction was entirely built upon the words of an informant who alleged that Melon confessed to the murder. She served 17 years in prison until it became clear that this informant was an untrustworthy, habitual liar. Now the moment has come when Melon's case is rightfully overturned.
Judgment is vacated, the conviction is overturned, and as to Ms. Melon, the case is dismissed.
In a swift shift from tears to joy, Melon, upon her release, took her daughter to McDonald's for that long-awaited Happy Meal. The Los Angeles City Council approved a $12 million settlement for Susan Melon.
I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to be a miserable lifer. I knew I was going to go home.
Is that your first cell phone?
Yeah, I never had one. I don't even know how to turn it on.
The little things once taken for granted
I'm free!
are suddenly new again.
I'm in a car!
One day cannot undo 17 years, but this one
I love you.
came pretty close.
Luis Vargas spent 16 years in prison for crimes he didn't commit. At the age of 29, he was living in Los Angeles, California, where he was charged with 3 sexual assaults. Based on the similar descriptions of these crimes, police concluded that it was the same person that committed all 3 attacks. Vargas was found guilty on all charges and served 16 years in prison. However, the California Innocence Project conducted DNA testing on the remaining physical evidence and the victim's clothing. The results did not match Vargas, conclusively proving his innocence in these crimes.
He is in fact innocent because the evidence will show that it undermines the prosecution's case.
Vargas remained speechless as he was exonerated from all crimes. He had just one humble wish for his mother when he would finally regain his freedom.
Please buy me a big hamburger and we eat it together.
Vargas received $886,000 in state compensation.
Not having a father figure is difficult. You don't have that sense of protection, that sense of security. And growing up, I would cry myself to sleep.